I would just like to take this time to welcome everyone again to the 2021 CCCS Symposium. I do appreciate you joining myself and Katie during this session, ensuring marginalized students succeed in your college classroom.
We'd like to start off by practicing what we preach. So the first thing we'd like to do with you guys is a check-in on how you're feeling today. So we play something called Fist to Five at Generation Schools Network. And so we like to show on our fist when we're in the classroom in person, we show on our fist, but you can use the Zoom chat today. So a fist means I'm not doing very well today. I'm at a 0. I'm feeling very tired, very sad, very emotionally drained. A 5 means I'm ready to go. I'm ready to conquer the weekend. I'm feeling energetic and really great. So and you can be anywhere in between. So if you could take a minute and show us if you're on video where you are on Fist to Five, or feel free to type it in the chat and just tell us how you're feeling today. Awesome, thanks for participating. Lots of people feeling great, lots of 4s, lots of 5s. Fridays are low energy for some, lots of 3s. For me, I'm a 4 because it's like I'm ready for the weekend, but I just need that one more boost to get there. So thanks very much for participating in that.
So I would like to begin with sharing a clip from one of my students. Ariel was so inspiring this morning when she talked about the experiences that our students have in our classrooms. And here at CCCS, overall. I will let Arabella, that's the name of my student that is talking in this clip, I will let her take it from there.
Ms. Arabella Orozco. I graduated from the Community College of Aurora on May 11th, 2019 with honors, obtaining an Associates of Arts in Early Childhood Education. Today I'm here to speak about Ms. Shirley Smith's class. What was different about taking her class was the transparency when it came to cultural inclusion. Ms. Smith made sure she created a respectful and accepting safe learning environment for all her students to express their academic knowledge, creating a platform for students to learn about the different cultures that lived in her classroom through the use of projects and diverse group collaboration. Ms. Smith started each day by asking us how are we doing and feeling today. And I found this simple gesture to be the greatest and most admirable quality in Ms. Smith beholds, aside from her high level of knowledge for the subject she was teaching. I must say I sat in many classes at CCA, but none of them care to ask me ever how I was feeling, especially when I was a month pregnant. But Ms. Smith understood that in order to build a healthy teacher-student relationship and for an effective and intentional learning to happen, there must be trust. And trust is something that you need to earn and not just expect. Asking her students how you're feeling today before diving into any topic or discussions, that really set the tone for my learning experience in Ms. Smith's class. Ms. Smith assisted me as well as other students in many ways. I can only speak for myself today, but her compassion, especially when I found myself at one point in her class feeling that I did not belong because I didn't have any early education background like everyone in the class did. I remember one day staying after class and asking Ms. Smith, I don't feel like I belong in your class. I think I'm going to drop your class and go back to retail, which at the time, it was all the experience I had. Ms. Smith said to me, wait a minute, have you ever babysat? And I said to her, yes, lots of time. Ms. Smith responded, you belong in my class, and that is all the experience you need. But you know what will really make you successful in this field is having passion for children and for teaching children to be the best version of themselves. I remember at that that very moment, I began to feel that this was the place and career for me. So I stayed. Ms. Smith went beyond her teaching duties. She took me under her wings, checking with me often to help me stay in the right path on my education career, making sure I walked that stage on graduation day. And I sure did. I wanted to thank Ms. Smith how much her mentoring paid off. I exceeded all expectations. I graduated with honors. I received the Student Success Award, and I moved on to the University of Northern Colorado, majoring in early childhood education, completing my degree on May 2020 with honors again, and awarded the Dean's List of Distinctions Award. Now I've been accepted to the University of Colorado Boulder for their master's program on speech language pathology, starting this summer. If my academic trajectory has not impressed you yet, well, perhaps this will. Ms. Shirley Smith is one-of-a-kind professor, and I will always embody the best version of myself because she believed, and still today believes in me when no one else cared to notice me because I didn't look nor spoke like them. But Ms. Smith saw beyond the race. She saw the bigger picture. A talented woman who is going to change the world. And ladies and gentlemen, I am still striving to reach the best version of myself. Because of great teachers like Miss Shirley Smith, I am today who I am.
I choke up. This is the third time I've seen that. I choke up each time I see it. She is really an inspiration to me as well. And if you listen to Arabella graduated in May of 2019 with her associate's degree from CCA. She also graduated a year later from UNC, University of Northern Colorado, with her bachelor's degree in early childhood education of May 2020. So she is definitely on the path to, well, she's already been successful in allowing her to be who she was, to be comfortable, and just meeting her where she was, changing her career. That's all it took, with just a couple of kind words. So let me briefly introduce myself. My name's Shirley Smith. I've been in the education field now for 21 plus years. I've been an adjunct professor at the Community College of Aurora for 11 years now. And I also work at Generation School Networks. That's my buddy Katie with me today, where we do a lot of work with schools, working with social emotional learning, teacher leadership programs, and just other aspects, especially teacher self-care as well. That's a big topic. So I've worked through with Denver Public Schools as a cultural responsive teaching mentor director. I've also worked with DPS with the social emotional learning. I have an extensive background of special education. That is my passion for teaching, to be honest. That is where I shine. As I alluded to, my co-presenter today is Katie. Katie, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Katie Peaton. I've been in education for 12 years. My experience started as a high school English teacher in Cincinnati. I was teaching primarily Black students through 9th through 12th grade, and I supported them all the way through their graduation, and I'll talk about that a little bit more and what additional supports were needed there. I work also in alternate school settings, so different types of high school models, and I spend the bulk of my time right now in the alternative accountability in rural Colorado, helping make sure that schools can measure themselves and each other in ways that are not just about the student test score, that are also about the ways of student wellness, physical safety, et cetera. The objectives for today are on the screen. Of course, I don't need to read to you guys. You're all college professors, and you can read our 5 objectives. But what I really want to emphasize here is that, as we heard in our keynote today, your classroom is a powerful space and it will remain a powerful space for many years to come. We have a responsibility to make sure that those spaces are culturally inclusive, responsive to our students' needs, et cetera. And the main thing here is that we're responsible for making sure all of our kids make it. It's about more than just teaching the content, and we want to make sure that you guys can take away some real strategies to implement in your classrooms to make those spaces a little more culturally responsive and to ensure all of your students succeed. So here we have another activity for you. We really want to lay the foundation with self-care for educators. So there's some self-care items on the screen here. We all know that we need to take mental breaks, take Zoom breaks, etc., but it's about a lot more as well. I can tell you earlier this week, Shirley and I were prepping for this presentation and I was feeling pretty stressed from my day. And she encouraged me, girl, go get a massage. And that's what I did. And I felt a whole lot better. So the foundation here is all about, we can't show up and be the best self for our students if we're not being the best selves for us. And we have to make sure that we're caring for us so that we can care for our kids. And our young adults at the college setting as well. So this past year, as everybody knows, I don't think anybody's had a super easy year. So we'd like to hear from you. What are your chief self-care strategies that you've been implementing this past year? So go ahead and type something in the chat. What's something you've done to take care of yourself during COVID? Regulating sleep and bed by 9. I see a lot of people are focused on sleep. That's a challenge for me. I don't get enough of it either.
Right. Move your desk in front of the window. Nice. Oh, dark chocolate. That's a good one. Be careful with that one. Self-reflection goes in direction. Yes. Oh, wow. 3 walks a day. I'm going to be like you, Diana, when I grow up.
Awesome. Drawing, Zumba classes, yoga daily. That's a good one, John.
Nice.
Okay, nice. Thanks for participating in that, everybody. So again, we have some more foundation here on social emotional learning. It's been a really hot topic the past couple of years, and especially this year, as we need to make sure that all of our students are succeeding. So social emotional learning is an integral part of education and human development, and it's the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage their emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals. It's how we learn to show empathy, etc. Additionally, SEL can be as little as what I started the presentation with, just checking in, asking how someone's feeling, or it can be as big as complicated social emotional programs that happen throughout our schools. Primarily, it's about saying hello and making the human connection. The kids can't learn. The kids can't learn. Your students will not make it at their level if they're not cared for, and they know that you're there for them.
So in taking a look at this illustration, this is the Castle framework. I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with it, but here at GSN also, we align our curriculum with the Castle framework, and the social emotional learning curriculum with the Castle framework, I'm sorry. And working from the inside out, to me, is most important. You see the social emotional learning inside, and then we have the 5 domains. So once we look at the 5 domains, then we move into our classroom settings, right? So with those classroom settings, we look at the SEL instruction and classroom climate. So I'm going to tell you about an experience that I had when I first began my teaching. Back in about, I think it was 1999, when I lived in Tampa, Florida. That was my first teaching job. And it was interesting to listen to Ariel this morning when she talked about love, life, and liberation. So I began my first teaching job in Hillsborough County at Franklin Middle School. I was a special ed teacher. I had 16 sixth graders and 1 para. So the first day, the first week, so they gave me my keys to a mobile home in the back of the school. They gave me a walkie-talkie and they told me to go for it. And so the category in which they entitled at that time my students that I was working with was severely emotionally disturbed. So wrap your head around that. So I'm teaching the classroom with the category or the title of severely emotional disturbed children. Here in Colorado, I think the title was Effective Needs. So first day of class, I had this lesson plan written out and ready to go. And I'm like, I'm going to nail this. We're going to start off with our English because, their brain is fresh and they're ready to go, right? Not so much. So as I thought I was starting my lesson plan and I was just going right to it, I had a couple of students to start to talk loud. Then it became even louder. Then it was a lot of student outbursts. And so no learning took place. So what I had to learn there was, one, I need to learn to make a connection with these students. I have to build a relationship with these students or there's no learning that's going to transpire. It didn't take me that long. So we started school in about August. So by the end of September, I'll say, I had finally made a connection with my students. They trusted me because again, these students came from various backgrounds, whether it was foster care, parents incarcerated, they're living with grandparents, whatever it may be. But these are sixth graders, right? So with that transitioning from the fifth grade to the sixth grade, from one classroom going, well, now they're in a self-contained classroom away from the other student population. And they're just in here with me all day. We only had maybe the 30 minutes for lunch and then maybe 30 minutes they could go to PE. That's all the time that they had because they were at risk of running away if we let them out too much. And again, it was only 2 people in the classroom with the 16 students with the severely emotionally disturbed category. I must say, in January of the following year, 2000, I redesigned that name. Instead of it being severely emotionally disturbed, I said, guess what? We are strong, we're educated, and we are determined to succeed. So by me making those connections with them and talking to them and not at them and reassuring them that they are somebody and they can be whomever they want to be and be the best that they can be, that's how I was able to turn my school year around. That's why it's very important in making those connections and utilizing the social emotional skills. And just like Katie said, it's just as easy as a smile or a hello. It's just that simple. That can make anyone's day.
So next up, we're gonna show you guys a second video here. This one's about 8 minutes long and features an educator named Rita Pearson. And she's gonna talk to you guys about the importance of student connection that she experienced.
I have spent my entire life either at the schoolhouse, on the way to the schoolhouse, or talking about what happens in the schoolhouse. Both my parents were educators. My maternal grandparents were educators. And for the past 40 years, I've done the same thing. And so needless to say, over those years, I've had a chance to look at education reform from a lot of perspectives. Some of those reforms have been good, some of them have been not so good. And we know why kids drop out. We know why kids don't learn. It's either poverty, low attendance, negative peer influences. We know why. But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connection. Relationships. James Comer says that no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. George Washington Carver says all learning is understanding relationships. Everyone in this room has been affected by a teacher or an adult. For years, I have watched people teach. I have looked at the best and I've looked at some of the worst. A colleague said to me one time, they don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed. Well, I said to her, you know, kids don't learn from people they don't like. She said, that's just a bunch of hooey. And I said to her, well, your year is going to be long and arduous, dear. Needless to say, it was. Some people think that you can either have it in you to build a relationship or you don't. I think Stephen Covey had the right idea. He said you ought to just throw in a few simple things, like seeking first to understand as opposed to being understood. Simple things like apologizing. You ever thought about that? Tell a kid you're sorry, they're in shock. I taught a lesson once on ratios. I'm not real good with math, but I was working on it. And I got back and looked at that teacher edition. I taught the whole lesson wrong. So I came back to class the next day and I said, look, guys, I need to apologize. I taught the whole lesson wrong. I'm so sorry. They said, that's okay, Miss Pearson. You were so excited. We just let you go. I have had classes that were so low, so academically deficient that I cried. I wondered, how am I going to take this group in 9 months from where they are to where they need to be? And it was difficult. It was awfully hard. How do I raise the self-esteem of a child and his academic achievement at the same time? One year I came up with a bright idea. I told all my students, you were chosen to be in my class because I am the best teacher and you are the best students. They put us all together so we could show everybody else how to do it. One of the students said, really? I said, really? We have to show the other classes how to do it. So when we walk down the hall, people will notice us. So you can't make noise, you just have to strut. And I gave him a saying to say, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. And they said, yeah. You say it long enough, it starts to be a part of you. And so, I gave a quiz, 20 questions. Student missed 18. I put a +2 on this paper and a big smiley face. He said, Miss Pearson, is this an F? I said, yes. He said, then why'd you put a smiley face? I said, because you on the roll. You got 2 right, you didn't miss them all. I said, and when we review this, won't you do better? He said, yes, ma'am, I can do better. You see, -18 sucks all the life out of you. +2 said, I ain't all bad. For years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in her desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. And kids can be cruel. And so she kept those things in her desk, and years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't. And I want you to just see what I've become. And when my mama died 2 years ago at 92, there were so many former students at her funeral. It brought tears to my eyes, not because she was gone, but because she left a legacy of relationships that could never disappear. Can we stand to have more relationships? Absolutely. Will you like all your children? Of course not. And you know your toughest kids are never absent. Never. You won't like them all, and the tough ones show up for a reason. It's the connection, it's the relationships. And while you won't like them all, the key is they can never, ever know it. So teachers become great actors and great actresses, and we come to work when we don't feel like it, and we listen to policy that doesn't make sense, and we teach anyway. We teach anyway because that's what we do. Teaching and learning should bring joy. How powerful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion? Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Is this job tough? You betcha. Oh God, you betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We're educators. We're born to make a difference. Thank you so much.
So one of the things we really want you to think about from that slide or that video is that every student deserves a champion, and that doesn't end when they're 18 or doesn't end when they graduate from high school. It's still true when they come to your college classroom. So a lot of kids are going to, even though they make it past high school, they have the skills to succeed, they get admitted to the college classroom, they still need a champion, and that role might be yours to fill. So what we want you to do is to think for about a minute, what do you consider as your role in student success? So go ahead and type that in the chat if you have that identified. If not, you can feel free to think about it a little bit more. The other thing to think about is you had a champion to help you succeed as well. So think about what made that person special and what was their role in your success. So if you could just think a moment about your role in the student's success when they come to you.
Mm-hmm. Great. Coach, mentoring, listening, supporting students, believing in them, meeting them where they are.
Realizing their potential, I love that. Everybody's got some.
Absolutely.
Support all positive effort, great.
Facilitator, absolutely. And like Ms. Pearson said, it's not easy, but it's also not impossible, right? All right. So moving to the next slide, this is just a somewhat of a small illustration. I wanted to see what resonated with you when you think about the students in our classrooms. Who are they? How do you make connections on the first day? How do you know what they're coming to college for? How do you find that out? Do you wonder about that? Does it make a difference to you why they're there, if they're going to get a degree or if they're going to get a certification? Does it matter? So this leads me to this next slide. I had to put this in there. You know, just think how we should celebrate being a part of this platform. 13 community colleges of Colorado. Are you serious? There's 13 of us. And just think about it. We are so lucky. We are so privileged to have our students to choose us, right? Now, what are the reasons do you think they're choosing us? Just think about that. Maybe it's because it's more cost effective. Maybe it's because the location of the community colleges. Maybe it's because we have small classes, right? That's just to name a few. So just think about it. Why do you think our students choose us? Out of all the colleges or universities that they can choose, why do they choose us? And remember, earlier, Ariel said that 40% of our student population are students of color, and 60% are first-generation graduates. So why are they choosing us? Think about that. And how do we play a role in that? Think about the age range in which we have students. With concurrent enrollment, we have students as young as 17 years old, maybe a junior in high school attending our classes. And I would say the range will go into infinity because I can't even put a number on it, because we have students like my earlier student, Arabella. She was changing her job career, right? So it went from, okay, concurrent enrollment, where the students are coming in, gaining those high school credits, gaining those college credits so they can graduate. And I'm glad to say, CCA, we have an enormous amount of those students. They graduate in May with their high school diploma in addition to their associate's degree, community college diploma, right? And that's great. But again, why do they choose us? So I'm just going to put myself out there for a second. I am the youngest of 9. I was born in Oklahoma City. My mom and dad were 2 hard workers, but my mother and father only had an 8th grade education. My dad was a brick mason by trade, and my mother cleaned houses. And again, I was the youngest of 9. I was the first one to graduate college. I graduated from Rose State College in Midwest City, Oklahoma, with my associate's degree in early childhood education. I moved to Colorado. My sister, older than myself, was the first one to move out of Oklahoma. So I said I wanted to be like her. So I moved to Colorado and I went to Metro. And I graduated from Metro with my bachelor's degree. I continued on and I earned my master's degree through Walden University. I'm currently looking at my doctoral degree, working on that through North Central University. So I am that student. I was that student. I've lived there. So I can walk in their shoes and understand where they're coming from. So just think about that question I asked you. Why were we so lucky for them to choose us? It makes a difference when you make those student and human connections with our students. It makes a big difference.
So as Shirley shared too a little bit about her beginning of her teaching experience, I just wanted to allude quickly to my first teaching job was I was teaching students, juniors high school English, and I was 22 years old and they were 18 years old. They were ready to get to that next level, and I walked in with my Shakespeare and my Socratic seminar, and I was ready to go to the top of that pyramid. Self-fulfillment, you guys are ready to graduate. I'm going to get you there. I'm going to get you where you need to be. And they were interested in the content, and they were willing to learn, but they had some pretty serious needs that had to be addressed. A lot of them were homeless or migrant and moving in with different families throughout the time. A lot of them were hungry when they got to me. There were some physical safety needs. A lot of them were living on the streets and getting into some situations that were challenging before they got to me. And I had to work really hard to meet their needs before they could get to the top of that pyramid, that self-fulfillment. So when your kids come to you, you have to focus on that social piece, the connection. You guys already see that it's important, but this is just demonstrating that they can't get to the top of the pyramid. They can't succeed in self-fulfillment until we meet their bottom needs as well. So they need that social group. And then also, as an aside, I just want to mention the esteem piece is really important too. So once you make that connection, you have to keep that connection. So as Arabella mentioned in the beginning, she thought about dropping out, and all it took was a few kind words of inspiring self-confidence and telling her that she belonged to get her to that success. So it's just really important, and this visual, I think, is helpful there. The other one here, you guys are probably familiar with multiple intelligences, but what we want to highlight here is that, does your teaching style match their intelligences? So think about how much time is being used for you to talk, how much time is being used for them to talk as well, and pause and reflect. The old way is the lecture. We're living in an innovative world. We have to engage them, and we have to meet them where they're at. We have to be unique. We have to balance between the teacher talk and the student talk. That's essential to the success as well.
So with that being said, I would like to ask you, what is your teaching style? So just think about that. How do you give your instructional delivery? Is your classroom teacher-centered, student-centered, inquiry-based, cooperative learning, blended learning, lecture, or a combination? If you would like to share in the chat, please do so now. It would just be interesting to see what style of teaching you utilize in your classroom. Now, as you sit with that teaching style, we're going to move to the next slide. And just hold on to that, because we're going to look at that again. Really, really important. So as Katie was talking about, how much teacher talk is happening in your classroom, right? And just like I created that lesson plan and I had my own agenda coming into that 6th grade classroom, they're going to learn this and I'm going to teach this. But it didn't work out that way, did it? I had my own agenda, but my students had a different concept of what they wanted to do, right? Another position that I held at Denver Public Schools, I was one of the peer evaluators for the district. And we used the third item on the list. It's called the Leading Effective Academic Practices. This is a framework that is utilized. We utilize this going into our teachers' classrooms. So the first year I was a peer evaluator, I had to evaluate 100 teachers that school year. So with that being said, I would go into the classroom for at least 45 minutes. I would observe the teacher. I would write up my report. I would then send her the report. I would allow her to do a self-assessment, and then we would meet up and we would talk about things. Overall, the bottom line was there was a lot of teacher talk going on and not enough student talk. So the teacher was giving her lesson and giving her delivery of the lesson and going through her lesson plan, but she didn't have enough opportunities for the students to do what they needed to do. As we look at the next slide, one of the categories range from not meeting to approaching to effective to distinguished. And I must say, many of my teachers fell within the approaching category. So if you look down at the effective category, it says these are the teacher behaviors. And if you go to the LEAP framework, you'll see teacher behaviors as well as student behaviors. But for now, these are the teacher behaviors. And down at the next to the last bullet, it says the balance of teacher and student talk consistently contributes to the student's learning and is appropriate for chosen teaching methodology. Imagine that. So these are things, I think I did this back in 2010. You have to be able to balance out that teacher talk and that student talk. And I know with a lot of different content areas that may be hard, but it's all about innovation and creativity, right? With technology and different things that we have at our fingertips, it's really important that we're able to make sure that we can think outside the box and maybe have some other resources or tools that we may need in order for our students to utilize to be successful in our classes. So I have another question for you as we move forward to the next slide. Does your teaching style match the needs of your students? So let's think about that. So if we're lecturing, and that's not how some of our students learn or retain information, how do you adjust your lesson? So if you think about your success rate of your students in your classrooms that you teach, how many times have you had to reteach different content, different concepts? Again, once you learn to utilize and balance the teacher talk and the student talk, that's when more learning comes on. So with myself, I do a lot of cooperative learning. That's one of my big teaching styles from day one. I place students in groups and I get them going in that aspect. I learned a lot from being that peer evaluator. So just off the top of your head, what do you think some of the things that you can change in your classroom to balance that teacher talk and student talk? And we will share some strategies with you later, so you're not alone. Next slide.
So one strategy that comes in handy for me a lot is going back to Bloom's taxonomy. This is another foundational piece for a lot of educators I'm sure you're familiar with. Lower order thinking skills versus higher order thinking skills. The range is the level of complexity of tasks that we're asking students to complete. A lot of times we want to start at the highest level, right? Let's evaluate, let's create. But we might have some students that are behind academically as well. So simply modifying the task to maybe be in the lower order thinking skills or maybe somewhere in the middle helps them enter into the content and might help them understand better faster. So we might just modify and provide different types of activities to meet the needs of all the students that are in the classroom.
Absolutely. And I think, Katie, for time's sake, this is a video. I'm not sure how many of you have seen this video, so we may not play this video, but it is in the link when you get the slides. So basically, what this teacher did, he learned a handshake for all of his students entering that classroom. That's how he met his students outside the door. So this could
it's
be
real cute, but we will.
Right.
Sorry.
You want to show a couple of minutes?
We can skip it. It'll be in the link. We're going to run short on time.
And this is a 5th grade teacher. Now, who's to say that this doesn't work in your classrooms as well, right? Meeting them at the door, even if it's for the first day. And again, I know we have an agenda. I know, like Ariel said earlier, about the scope and sequence, but what if we just paused? How about this activity? This is activity I do in my classroom, in person, of course. So as the students are coming through the door, I already have my index cards pre-made. I either have rainbow or I put them all in the same color. So I give each student a card as they're coming through the door. Now in the classroom, I already either have it on the whiteboard, what I want them to put on their card, or it's on the projector. So as I begin to come into the classroom and I see the students sitting down, sometimes they come with their buddies, their friends. That also gives me an idea of what I'm going to do as far as creating my groups. So a lot of times I will create groups, probably no more than 4. So I will have them make a rainbow of certain colors. So as the students begin to make that rainbow, so they've already written this information on those cards, I have them move to a certain rainbow. So they have to make a rainbow in a group with the cards. You can't duplicate the color. So if you were sitting by your friend, guess what? That's separated now. And I do this so that students can network in the classroom and learn other people instead of just being isolated in the classroom. I love the culture and climate that I create. I love the trustworthiness that I create in my classrooms. So then as the students begin to get in their groups, I have them pair up. So as they begin to talk to one another, I'd say introduce yourself. And then I have them, after maybe 3 to 4 minutes, I have them come up to the front of the class and they introduce their new friend, their new peer that they just met. This is an easy concept because the information is already on the card for them. So they introduce that friend, and now they, for the 16 weeks, or if it's accelerated for the 8 weeks that they're together, they're going to stay in that group of the rainbow that I created for them for the entire 16 weeks. No one can change. And because I do teach early childhood education, so I'm teaching students that want to become teachers or daycare directors or daycare teachers in a daycare facility. So I teach them. The reason why you have to stay with your groups is because you have to learn how to work with one another. Again, you may not love one another, but you have to have that respect for one another in that classroom. As when you're teaching students and placing them in their groups, and they may want to go and be with their buddy or something like that, we have to teach by example. So they stay in their groups for those 16 weeks, and it ends up being so dynamically great. Another thing I do for the first day of class, when we start our chapter 1, we go through that syllabus inside and out. So I have them do a syllabus field trip. That way, if they have any questions, we're talking about it right here and now, whether it's the grading scale, whether it's late work, whether if you late to class, what happens. We talk about that. Now, generally, I do teach in the evenings, but lately, when we're not COVID, I do teach in the daytime. So my classes are maybe an hour long. But again, I still take the time to do this exercise the first day. And on top of that, as we said before, as Arabella stated, when my students, we get to a point, let's say that second week, I check in with them. How's everyone doing? Sometimes being in the educational realm, some of my students have lost jobs, but others have worked at a place where they needed help. So that's what we did. So using themselves as resources is very, very valuable in the classroom. And again, I do know the content area in which you teach could be tricky, but at the same time, I think when you check in with your students and you make that a norm for your classroom, then it breaks a lot of the barriers down, and they don't feel isolated. They feel like they're wanted. They feel like they're welcome and they're supposed to be there. Next slide. And again, it's very important as an instructor to be transparent with your students and to have clear communication with your students. If you don't accept late work during that syllabus field trip, you let them know, we do not accept late work. However, what things are you putting in place for your students to be successful so that they don't have to do the late work? Let's say they don't understand an assignment. What are your office hours? What are your Zoom hours? How can you assist them that way? How are you reaching out to those students to let them know that, okay, I'm on your side and I want you to succeed. I don't just want you to enroll at the community colleges. I want you to go beyond that, just like Arabella. I want you to graduate. In addition to that, I want you to go on to wherever, whether it's career-based or if it's going to a four-year university. So how can I help you be the best you? Just let me know. And again, that's building the relationships with those students from day one. Getting to know their name, the exact pronunciation of their name is very, very important, instead of just making your own nickname for various students. That has happened in the past. Next slide. As Katie and I was saying earlier, just saying simple hello, that can make someone's day. And if you pay attention, you can see how they're feeling or not. Or like we did before, the fist to five, just implementing some of those things. And at the end of the slide, which if you would like it, we have some different SEL units that are free to you. And although we work mainly with K through 12, does that matter? It works in your higher education courses. I've used it. I've been in there for 11 years now, and I've been using it, right? And just building those relationships. And just like Rita Pearson had stated before, students don't learn well from people they don't like. So if they figure that you really don't like them too much, or don't care for them, or not reaching out to them, or speaking to them, or calling on them in class when they do raise their hand to answer questions, that shuts them down. So what can we do to be better? What can we do to help to empower our students, to encourage our students, and enhance our students with the skill sets that they come to us at the community college, right? Instead of harping on what they don't have, how can we help them with our own toolkit of resources, right? Where do we direct them? Do we send them to the writing lab? Do we send them to the math lab? What do we need to do to help our students? So at the end of the day, isn't education about teaching others how to make connections in the world and then learning? And another thing I would like for you to think about, as the students become young adults, and now they're in our classrooms, don't they still deserve a champion? If you would be so kind, take the time and place one thing in the chat box that you're willing to use in your classroom after this session, just to share with everyone. One thing.
I really hate to interrupt. I don't want to cut this short at all, but unfortunately, I do have to bop out in about 2 minutes, and that's going to probably close the meeting.